From the bottom of my heart, I wanted to say thank you.
That is a wrap on Season 2 of The Witcher. It is hard to believe it's been over a year since we kicked off this season in typical Witcher fashion, in a freezing cold forest in the middle of the night. Since then, we've shot for 158 days, with at least one unit, sometimes two, sometimes three, all while decked out in face shields and face masks and goggles and slathered in hand sanitizer. We shot in 15 locations with 89 cast members and over 1,200 different crew members, all bringing their craft to life. None of us has ever experienced a television season like this before, I'm sure. We cannot wait to show you what Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer and Jaskier and all of your favorites have been up to since we left them at the Battle of Sodden Hill. There are plenty of new characters and storylines, and of course, monsters to explore as well, as we dig into the Blood of Elves and beyond. We are so proud of everything we accomplished in Season 2, and we can't wait for you to watch it.
Welcome back, everyone. Toss a coin to your Witcher. They just dropped a Season 2 teaser trailer, and they just announced that they've finished filming and will be dropping new episodes before the end of the year. So we will get our Witcher Season 2 before 2022, thankfully. I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, so if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to get everything. There's a bunch of new casting announcements too, like they just announced that they're doing some characters from the Wild Hunt during Season 2. They dropped some new footage, and they announced more about what the storyline of Season 2 will be. As you would expect, they're adapting the book Blood of Elves, which is the next book in the series. But they are incorporating some aspects of the Witcher games, which actually take place after all the books. If you've never read the books and you just played the games actually start after the book story ends. They actually had to retcon what happens to Geralt at the end of the books at the beginning of the games in order for the games to exist. But as you can see from the characters, they've used the Season 2 time jump opportunity to give some of the characters a top-to-bottom redesign, just because everyone was complaining about the Nilfgaardian armor during Season 1, that weird, strange-looking armor, and they upgraded Geralt's armor as well, but that may have been also for practical reasons to allow Henry Cavill to move around in it just a little bit better. There is also news about what's happening with some of the other Witcher spin-off series that they're doing, like they're doing the Witcher Blood Origin story, which is about the very first Witcher in the timeline. Then they have the Witcher movie that they're also working on separately, which is about a young version of Vesemir called Nightmare of the Wolf. I'll talk about that at the end of the video just to remind everyone. But even if you've only played a little bit of the games, you're probably at least somewhat familiar, or you've seen pictures of, or you vaguely understand the Wild Hunt. The biggest new casting announcement that they made is for Eredin, who is the leader of the Red Riders and then eventually the leader of the Wild Hunt itself. He is the character that appears during the books, but most people remember him from the games just because I think more people encountered his character through the Wild Hunt storyline, The Witcher 3. So quick explainer for his character if you're not totally familiar what his relationship to Ciri, Geralt, and the other characters are. He's an elf that was born to a different faction of elves that was born on a different planet, but his faction of elves originally came from the continent where the main version of elves in the Witcher universe come from. Because the world of The Witcher is a multiverse story and people travel between worlds, there's this conjunction of the spheres that happens, which basically allows travel between worlds. It brings humans to the continent, and when that happens, the main group of elves develop some powerful magic to allow them to travel to other worlds, so a group of elves travel to another planet, and that's the group of elves that Eredin was born to. But he wasn't born until his group of elves traveled to that other world. Once his faction of elves travels to that other world, they wind up finding a bunch of humans that already live there. They killed most of them off because they saw what humans did when they traveled to the main world of The Witcher. They're like, no, we're not letting this happen again. But over time, after they killed all the humans off, they found that they didn't have any slave labor, so they needed to find other people to do all this work. They also winded up finding the unicorns. So within the world of The Witcher's story, unicorns are like extra-dimensional beings, crazy powerful, and can travel between universes. So eventually those elves wind up capturing one of the unicorns and using it to gain access to the Gateway, which is basically like the train depot to all the different worlds of the Witcher multiverse. Sort of the main group in charge of going around to different worlds and conquering them is called the Red Riders. Eredin becomes their leader. And when they start going around conquering these other planets, or trying to conquer these other planets, they develop this crazy, scary-looking armor, which is why the Wild Hunt looks the way it does. But when you see him with his mask off, he looks like a normal elf. He's just using magic to create the armor and to change his voice, so that's why it sounds like he's this otherworldly, ghostly figure, but really he's just a warrior king from another planet. Eventually, what winds up happening is the unicorns free themselves from their captivity, this other faction of elves that Aroden belongs to, so they lose access to the Gateway of Worlds, and they can't go around conquering any other planets in the multiverse. Eventually, they wind up detecting Ciri's presence and her elder blood, and learn that they can use that to gain access to the Gateway of Worlds again, and that's when the Wild Hunt starts coming for Ciri. So like at the beginning of the Witcher 3 game, you see Geralt sort of having this vision, this dream of the Wild Hunt coming for Ciri. It's sort of like a foretelling of what's eventually going to happen later in the game.
I've long awaited this, and you, White Wolf.
There's a slightly different version of this that happens in the books, so the characters during the video games later in the timeline that are part of the Wild Hunt also show up earlier in the timeline in the books, but they change a little bit of the story. There's some retcons that happen in the game. Aroden does wind up running into Ciri during the course of the books. What they might be doing is just incorporating later elements of the books, or maybe giving Ciri some visions or Geralt some visions about what might happen later. There are a bunch of different ways that they could use Aroden's character during the TV show this early in the storyline. The Witcher showrunner, Lauren Hissrich, who actually shows up during this teaser trailer, she actually said that she has about 5 seasons planned out, but they could do like 7 to 10 seasons because there's so much story within the Witcher universe. It just depends on how much they want to speed run through the book story. Later, what winds up happening, though, is that another one of these elves from this different faction called Avallac'h winds up manipulating Ciri, trying to use her as part of his plot to stop the White Frost. So he has grander ambitions than what's happening with Aroden and the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt wants Ciri's elder blood so they can just go around conquering the multiverse. But depending on whether you're reading the books or whether you're watching the games, the story's a little bit different for his character. Avallac'h becomes this really big figure trying to manipulate Ciri, who also wants her elder blood for slightly different reasons. That's one of the funny things about the Witcher storyline. Regardless of which faction you're talking about, everybody wants Ciri for some slightly different reason because of her elder blood, because it makes her so powerful and what they can do with that. As part of this casting announcement, though, there is a character who's associated with Avallac'h's character, and he's obviously a really big figure later in the games, but he also shows up during the books as well. So the other big character that's sort of associated with Aroden, these other faction of elves from another planet, and Avallac'h's character is Lara Dorren. She's one of the earliest carriers of the Elder Blood and Ciri's ancestor, like her great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, many times removed. She was an elven sorceress who was actually supposed to marry Avallac'h, and they were going to give birth to this child who was going to have the Elder Blood, inherit the Elder Blood, and they were going to use that to stop the White Frost. There's this whole prophecy around Ciri's character, her Elder Blood, and the White Frost. The White Frost is sort of like the coming of an ice age to the planet. So you have all these different factions that are trying to stop it through different means using Ciri. But the Elder Blood was basically a project of these ancient elves. They were trying to create a being that was powerful enough to stop the White Frost. And eventually Ciri winds up inheriting this power. She's the last member of the bloodline, so that's why everybody all over the place within the Witcher universe wants her. But it all goes back to Avallac'h and this other character, Lara Dorren, this elven sorceress. Eventually, she wound up falling in love with a human mage, had a child with that person, so the Elder Blood project that the elves had sort of passed to a different lineage and sort of threw their plans into disarray. They also confirmed that they're casting Ithleen, who is the person who created the prophecy about Ciri's Elder Blood and the White Frost. So obviously that's just a key part of the story, because that's sort of the end game for the show, is doing the White Frost. They said that they were never going to do the video game storyline, but then just a little while ago, the Witcher showrunner was like, well, we're going to do some of this stuff from the games. They announced that Graham McTavish, of all people, have joined the cast as Sigmund Dijkstra, who's the Redanian spy master. You probably remember him from somewhere. He's done so many big roles in the past couple of years. He's an advisor to King Vizimir, who they also announced is going to be part of Season 2. And along with their characters, they're doing the Philippa Eilhart character, who is a sorceress that works in his court. So it just sounds like we're going to be spending a whole lot more time with the Redanians during Season 2. They also finally confirmed they're doing the Rience character. I don't know if they're going to be changing him from the books because they're adapting Blood of Elves for most of the storyline of Season 2, and he is the main antagonist for the most part during Blood of Elves. But he's really just working for Vilgefortz, so we'll see how they try to adapt that storyline. Remember, only 8 episodes, so they tend to speed run some of these storylines. As you would expect, he spends most of Season 2 trying to get Ciri from Geralt. But the whole thing with Geralt and Ciri during Season 2, as I've said in previous videos, is that most of Season 2 will pick up with him training her at Kaer Morhen. They are doing Cohen, Eskel, and Lambert, the 3 other Witchers that are sort of around Geralt while he's training Ciri during this period. You've seen most of them during the video games if you played any of the video games. And if it wasn't clear, when Season 2 picks up, Yennefer has been captured by Nilfgaard, so she is kind of with them for a good portion of the series before eventually she winds up reuniting with Geralt and Ciri. So at least for the first couple of episodes, I'm assuming that the characters will be split up, like even Jaskier is off on his own, not with Geralt while this is happening at the beginning of the season. They posted a couple pictures of Ciri's training montages, so you just can imagine how that plays out. If you played the games, at the beginning of Witcher 3, you kind of see a young version of Ciri training with her sword. The whole thing with the Witcher prequel series, Blood Origin, there was a report that they were trying to cast Jason Momoa as the original Witcher. They've made a couple casting announcements for the show for some of the main characters, but they haven't announced the complete cast yet, and it sounds like they're getting ready to start filming that pretty soon. But everyone post all your predictions in the comments below, and let me know what you think they're doing with Eredin and the Wild Hunt characters during Season 2. While you wait for everything, click here for all my other Witcher Season 2 Netflix videos, and click here for my brand new Marvel Loki trailer video and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and toss a coin to your Witcher.